It's actually the Knight Foundation of the Knight. Welcome everybody to the Design in Detroit panel. My name is Nathaniel Wallace and I'm with the Knight Foundation. Today with me, it's my pleasure to moderate this esteemed panel that we have with us today. So today we got Dr. Dwayne Edwards, founder of Pencil Lewis College of Business and Design. We have Crystal Wyndham, Executive Director of Global Industrial Design for General Motors. We have Don Tuskey, President of College of Creative Studies. And we have Alan Largen, Creative and Innovation Director for Rock Ventures. All right, let's have a seat. Let's have a seat and let's dig into it. So before we get started, I am not a gym shoe and suit guy, but I felt a lot of pressure sitting up here with these guys today because I knew what Dee was about to do, and I know how Alan gets down. So I'm excited about this panel. I'm really excited about this panel because this is a really important topic, especially for right now. But let's first start off with origin stories. So Dr. Edwards and Crystal, Dwayne, let's start with you. Take us through the journey that it took to just kind of occupy the space that you're in right now. Okay. You got Fortune 100 and Fortune 50 companies and brands looking to you to actually push us forward in regards to product design. You have, Pencil Lewis College of Business and Design coming online, the first HBCU to focus on design in the nation. So kind of give us your story. Tell us how it jumped off.
Yeah. That's Crystal first. Looks like they got, that's me. There we go. I love the AV TV stuff. They quick. Love it. So what I'll do is I'll walk you through, there we go. So that's little me, but I show that because I was a dreamer as a kid, grew up in Inglewood, California, always had an imagination for doing different things. And it really sparked. Now, it's good to actually have a conversation with people who remember the TV guide in the audience, because most of the time I talk to kids and they're like, a TV guide? Like what? A book came to your house every week, told you what was on TV? That makes no sense, right? And so my real spark started here, man. I would get the TV guide and I would see this drawing competition and I would always see like what you can't see at the top is the $5,000. I didn't see the end prizes part. Yeah. And I would always win. So I won over 20,000 worth of scholarships, but I was only 12 years old. Wow. And that was really my spark. Then I grew up in the city of Inglewood, played ball in Inglewood High, but my basketball shoes never matched my uniform, so I would always customize my sneakers to match my uniform. This was like in 85, 86. And so I went to my guidance counselor one day. I was like, I figured out what I want to do with my life. And she tells me no black kid from Inglewood would ever become a footwear designer. And so I believed her because I had no reference point. And so I just kept persevering because I knew I have no money. I'm the youngest of 6 kids raised by a single parent. And so I knew college wasn't in my future. And so I really did actually give up on this idea of becoming a designer just because I had no physical path. I didn't see how it was going to become possible. And my mother gave me this 25-cent card back when I was 16 years old. And I carried everywhere I go. And it's an amazing story of just simply believing in yourself. And it was a really simple lesson of how can I expect someone else to believe my visions and my dreams if I don't even believe it myself. And so that fortune turned into me getting my first job as a footwear designer at the age of 19. And I did it by that top box in the top right. I would put sketches in that wooden suggestion box every day for 6 months until the owner of the company called me into his office and offered me a job at the age of 19 years old. I was like, I'm shocked, right? And so I started designing shoes for Kareem and Carl and Shaq in high school. Wow. Then I always remember Miss Wilson Jefferson. I always keep her close with me. I always keep her close. And then I continued with my career designing product for, celebrities and entertainers. Big and Pac, and then my real, kind of breakthrough was joining the Jordan brand and being a part of that legacy of designing shoes for Melo, designing shoes for Derek Jeter, designing shoes for Roy Jones, Ray Allen, and then of course Michael himself. That was really the pinnacle for me. And it got to a point though where I wasn't seeing enough people look like me, and then there was kids that were killing themselves for sneakers that I was designing. And so I went to Nike and said, hey, can I start this high school program to try to identify kids at an earlier age? And that's when I met that gentleman over there. He had hair back then. So he was, you were 15 then? Yeah, he was a 15-year-old kid, and he won the competition, flew him up to Denver to meet Melo, and got super excited. And I was like, okay, I want to continue to do this type of work, that type of work of just seeing the enjoyment that he had. And so I did some personal reflection and decided to just leave the industry completely because I fell in love with mentoring and teaching. And I knew that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And ultimately, I decided to leave the industry completely and start my own academy that was dedicated to teaching kids how to design footwear. And that was really the rebirth for me as a designer, because I fell back in love with design, because I was no longer in the corporate walls and the struggle and the stress that I had to go through, but I was in this free space of being able to connect with kids. And my Detroit connections continued, where our first class, we had 41 kids, 35 of them are now professional designers to this day, and this was in 2010. But our first student that we hired was Edmund Holmes from Detroit, Michigan. He won the competition a few years prior, but Edmund went to CCS, and my connection kept coming back to Detroit over and over again. And so I started my teaching career. So I started teaching at Art Center and Parsons and MIT, just sharing my craft. And again, remember, I'm the kid who didn't go to college. And so I'm teaching at these prestigious universities just to understand all the rules so I can break them, because they all needed to be broken. Right. And the beauty of what we did with the academy is our industry supported the academy. So the kids were able to actually get educated for free. And that was super important for me, because I was the young kid who couldn't afford to go to college. And so I wanted to make sure that wasn't a barrier for other kids moving forward. And so we've placed so many kids into jobs, but our kids come from all over the globe. And I remember so the actual school, sorry, I skipped. There was a orange dot on my high school slide, and that would have been the school I would have attended if I would have known Art Center existed in Pasadena, California. Pasadena's about 30 to 2 hours away from Inglewood, depending on traffic. And 31 years later, I get an honorary degree from Art Center. And it's, thank you. For me, it was the culmination of my career, because I was the only fourth person in their entire history to get an honorary degree, and the first African American ever to get one as well. And thank you. I'm almost finished. I'll speed up. So Alan introduced me to Lewis College of Business. Never heard of it before. Went on Google, found out everything I can find out about it. Actually, I text Don a picture of it. I was like, hey, did you know CCS actually owns the original building for historically black college? And he was like, yeah, I guess maybe that's the sign outside of my office. Right. So it was a beautiful thing, and we connected with the family, acquired the college in 21. And then we changed the name over to Pencil Lewis College of Business. We changed the crest and the colors to reflect the founder, Violet Lewis, who was one of 3 black women to ever found a historically black college. And so we really want to pay homage to her and really help her get the light that she really deserves. We're housed here in this building that you guys are currently in right now. And that really wouldn't have been possible without Alan setting up a meeting with the Gilbert family. We were scheduled to have like an hour meeting, ended up being like 2 hours, almost 3-hour meeting. And that spoke volumes to me, because I understood the passion they had for this city. And that really continued to draw me in to the city as well. So they became one of our founding partners, the Gilbert Family Foundation, as well as Don at CCS. our connection. Don and I go back to the Portland days. He was a president in Portland for a college right around the corner from us, and then Target as well. And now our partners grow, so we're doing really well now. And we're two things. We're the first HBCU ever to reopen. As you mentioned, the first HBCU to focus on design, and we'll be the first HBCU, part of the largest design school organization in the U.S. And close with my favorite person, Miss Wilson Jefferson. I always keep her close. Always keep her close.
She's going to look up today like, why am I trending?
Right. Yeah.
So just to stay with you for a second. Yeah. So what is it about Detroit? What is it about Detroit that I mean, Pencil Academy was going great.
Yep.
You found the niche in the market.
Yep.
You got people from all over the country coming to do this thing. What is it about Detroit that made you leave the model that was already working and decided to just complicate your life even more? Say, let's open a school. Let's open an HBCU.
A whole college, yeah. The people, starting with that man down there. And then when he introduced me to Jennifer and Dan Gilbert, and that spoke volumes to me of the type of people they are. Yeah. I'm a people person. And I've met a ton of people in my lifetime, but I'm drawn to authentic people. Mm-hmm. And the authenticity that I've known Alan to have for almost 13, 14 years now. And then understanding, the Gilbert's vision for this city really kind of put it over the top. And then when I was able to meet the Lewis family, the grandkids, and really connect with Violet, the granddaughter, and understanding what the college was and what it meant. And then when we announced it, just the love we got from the city of Detroit. I mean, Detroit's unlike any other city as far as this emotional connection that people who were born and raised here have with this city.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, so I'm gonna lead with this headline, Crystal. First Black female design director in industry history.
That's what I'm talking about.
So if you could, please give us your origin story. And I think that one of the threads that we're going to pull on is representation.
Absolutely.
Right? And I'm just, whenever I think about representation, I'm remembering when Misty Copeland actually came to Detroit for the first time, and she had become the first principal for the American Ballet Theater. And she came here, and you've seen all these little black girls in the crowd with their tutus on. And it really dawned on me right there. And you always hear the term, if you can't see it, you can't be it, right? So I think you two are really good examples of the fact that you didn't have anybody to kind of pioneer that way. So growing up in Detroit, give us your story.
Yes, thank you. Dwayne, you continue to be an inspiration, your story. So I have a few images here. They can just cycle through if you want to do that. But it really starts out in 10th grade for me in high school. My art teacher confirmed that I had talent in art. And I was excited because I was enjoying myself in art class. So he said, hey, have your parents come see me at parent-teacher conferences. So my mom, she was a teacher, educator, and she said, no, we're gonna go to all of your academic classes first and make sure that everything is squared away there, and then we'll go see the art teacher. So we had a conversation. He went through all of my work with my parents and confirmed this talent. And that conversation and confirmation changed the trajectory of my life. From there, he led me down to the College for Creative Studies where I could develop my craft. At the same time, I declared to my parents that I wanted to be an artist. And they were, a little floored. They didn't want their daughter to be a starving artist. How are you going to make a living? And CCS had a program, a seminar, where parents and their creative students could come and learn about art-based careers. And it was a great class. It was a great seminar. And industrial design was my choice. So after getting accepted to CCS, or College for Creative Studies, I worked in the industrial design department. And the chairman of the automotive department would see my work, and he said, hey, have you ever thought about sketching cars, designing cars? And I said, no. He said, tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pay for you to take an intro to auto class. Wow. Because there are not many minorities and women in the field, and companies would definitely benefit from having that perspective. So I took the class. There were very few women in the class, but there was one in particular that we decided together, hey, we're gonna go for this. We're gonna go for this. And when I talk about support, it's not just the parents. That peer-to-peer support going into a non-traditional field, male-dominated, I look back on that, and that support was very, very powerful, as well as my African-American counterparts as well. We had a special connection. And we had the belief that even in a competitive environment, being vulnerable and exposing, how to navigate through, we could all be successful. So it was very powerful. From there, I had an internship at Ford. My second one was at General Motors, and it was there that I found my fit. General Motors gave me a job offer before I graduated, and I joined General Motors, and I rotated through different studios. The beauty of General Motors, it has so many brands, it's global. I worked on interiors, exteriors. I said yes to an international assignment early in my career, and that really opened my mind and perspective. And I really started to get this appetite for taking on and accepting challenges, really getting comfortable being uncomfortable with those stretch assignments. And I sat down with my mentor at the time, Ed Wilburn, and when I came back and we talked about what was the right path for me, interiors or exteriors. And we kind of talked about my strength being in interiors and the opportunities being there. So I trusted that, and I moved forward with that, and the majority of my career was focused on interiors. And I just kept saying yes to big and small assignments, being an individual contributor, designing a steering wheel, to being a lead designer on one full interior, to a manager designing and being responsible with the team designing several interiors. And then ultimately I got the position of director of Chevy Interiors. And that was that moment, where I became a history maker, at that point. And I did see individuals like me. So I have to bring that back at the end. And then from there, it was about making sure that we had a vehicle to set the tone for Chevy. And when I was in that space, it was the 2014 Impala. And so we did that as a team. We set that tone, and then all of the vehicles that followed, the next generation Malibu, the Volt, the Equinox, they had that tone. And so from the work that I did there, I was offered the opportunity to design and be the design director for interiors for GM's premium brand, Cadillac. So coming into Cadillac, it was about really elevating Cadillac to a new level. So I knew we had to have that catalyst, that vehicle that can help set that tone. So the first vehicle from start to finish that I could work with the team on was the Escalade. And so that Escalade helped set the tone for the brand going forward. Big technology, integrated, forms from instrument panel into doors, the best materials possible. And then we got that opportunity, clean sheet of paper with the electrified portfolio, with the Ultium platform, with the Lyric. So it's like a one-of-a-kind opportunity of the lifetime to really just have that clean sheet of paper. So we did that. If you haven't seen the Escalade or Lyric,
Should be one in the lobby.
Very proud of the team. Very proud of the team on that one. And then from there, about a year ago, I was promoted to executive director over global industrial design. And thank you. I just think about that because it's kind of full circle, kind of how I started. And so when you think about a role like that, not only do we have opportunities in product design and environments, but being responsible for all the screens, componentry, CMF, so colors, materials, and finishes, the badging inside and outside the vehicle for all of General Motors brands. It's a big job. Additionally, I have responsibility. I sit on the sustainability committee for General Motors, and one area that's dear to my heart is the outreach and development, because I do not want to be the last. Okay. And I have time to make a difference in that pipeline. So my success is great, but it would be a shame if I don't have anyone following in my footsteps and making history. We got to keep this going. Yeah. So very passionate about a lot of the outreach initiatives that we have, including working with CCS and Pencil.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Thank you.
That's absolutely amazing. So Don, I got a two-part question for you, kind of pulling on the thread of pipeline. So how do we create a pipeline for more stories like Crystal, from your vantage point? And what are some of the issues in higher education surrounding design?
One of the most important things for the pipeline is to address some of the issues in higher education, the student debt issue. I love higher education. My whole career has been in higher ed, but it all needs to change really quickly. And having a chance to meet Dwayne in Portland, Oregon, and having discussions about how higher education needs to change, it needs to be really refocused to make it more accessible, more inclusive. That starts with cost, but it also starts with approach. And it starts with teaching design K through 12. And if you look at most K through 12 systems, there's not much design taught in K through 12. And so we're helping to create some curriculum. Dwayne is working with a lot of high school students through Pencil, Lewis College of Business. But it's also breaking up how we learn. And I think one of the things that we talk about is breaking up semesters into smaller bits. Dwayne has great workshops and intensives. And so breaking up ways that students learn, and actually higher education and even K through 12 needs to learn more about how all of us learn. And that teachers and professors have learned in a certain way, and K through 12 and college mimics that, but we learn in a much more sort of iterative way. And I think that art and design schools have a real opportunity, if we change enough, to break up how we learn, from looking at just semesters to breaking it down to shorter blocks of time, making it more cost effective, and then really putting that design thinking and design teaching down through K through 12. What often happens in K through 12, if somebody's interested in some type of design, whether it's transportation or communication design or any kind of product, they're kind of nudged over into engineering, which is great, but that's not the same as design. And so the reality is that we need to do a better job from CCS's standpoint to help K through 12 teach more design, and then also make us more, be more cost effective. All of higher education needs to be more cost effective.
Yeah.
Alan, a quick question for you. So, Rock Ventures, innovation is what you do for Rock Ventures, which is long and wide.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what's your role, what you're up to, and kind of what you're seeing from your vantage point.
Yeah, I would say innovation has kind of maybe turned into a little bit of a buzzword more recently, so it can be broad. But working for a family like the Gilbert family, they very much have an entrepreneurial mindset. Even with how big the family of companies has gotten, close to 100 different companies. We're almost in every sector: Rocket, StockX, Bedrock, the Cavs. We're more global kind of than we've ever been. So I'm lucky enough to be on a team. Lexi Pochel, Andrew Quinta, Mark Hollis, where we're tasked with just what Dan calls tying threads throughout the portfolio, but then also with external partners, and that's how something like Pencil can happen, where it's not only trying to maximize, the opportunities and the impact. That's a big thing for us is impact. We clearly are not a nonprofit, but we like to say that we're for more than profit. And what that means for us is that we can do well by doing good. We have a saying, numbers and money do not lead, they follow. So if we just continue to make the right decisions in terms of partnering with phenomenal people like Dwayne and Don at CCS and Cranbrook, and the rest will kind of take care of itself. And so I'm blessed enough to work with the Cavs on, we just launched a rebrand, got the opportunity with Grant Gilbert, who just was recently speaking. He was crazy enough to ask me to start a company with him, Auditorium, which we were super excited about that. So yeah, I get to work in a lot of different ways. And I think that belief really started with having a mentor like Dwayne at the age of 15. That whole Nike Future Soul experience was really my Willy Wonka experience, right? I growing up sat in this weird intersection of I played, varsity basketball, but I was in AP art. So the people in my art class were not the people I was playing basketball with, and vice versa. And so it wasn't until I saw that there was this footwear design competition called Nike Future Soul where I was like, wait, sport and then my obsession with sneakers and design could actually come together. Wait, people get paid to do this? It's insane. I'm sure.
Pay good money too.
Yeah. And to work with athletes, I had a 19-inch vertical in high school, so I wasn't going to play not pro basketball and let alone college basketball. And so to see that I could pursue this pathway, and blessed enough to have a family that didn't discourage me from being creative. I think that's a big thing that I'm sure we'll dive into in a little bit. But I don't think it's so much about being encouraged to be creative. I just think it's not being discouraged, right? That there is a career. It should be STEAM instead of STEM. And so having that belief from Dwayne and my parents, and it was funny, when I was 15, I had to create my first business card as a part of one of Dwayne's pencil classes. I put Alan Largen, footwear designer, on there. I took it to him because we had to get it approved by him before we could print, the rest of the copies. He goes, looks great, cross off footwear, it's designer. We're like, dude, what are you talking about? I just did this footwear design competition. I want to be you. I want to be the head of Jordan one day designing. I want to do footwear. He goes, that's great, but you're not just a footwear designer. And I was like, all right, I'll change it, but I'm going to do shoes for the rest of my life. 3 internships at footwear companies later at CCS, and then I was working full-time at Adidas, and 6 months in, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And then I got in touch with Dan Gilbert and his team, and I think that was the next kind of unlock for me, someone seeing my talent, but seeing that I could do a lot more than just design footwear with that. And I think it's that problem-solving approach that CCS teaches as well. It's, you're identifying a problem, a target user, solutions, and then how do you deliver that? It doesn't need to be with pen and paper. And so I would say, coming back to your original question around innovating and designing, it's not all pen and paper for me, and I'm really blessed, to have that opportunity where I'm not stuck to my desk on a Cintiq all day. It's actually refreshing when I do get to do that. But yeah, the Gilbert family and the Rock family of companies just allow me to think big, and then thank God for a team that figures out how to rein that in. Lexi Pochel was the closer on the pencil deal for us. I say she's the Mariano Rivera of our team. She figures out how to get the job done, so shout out to her.
Nice. All right, so I want to open this up to everybody. So what do we think is the competitive advantage that Detroit has right now in regards to design? And that's design across the country. How are we looking at Detroit? When you look at Detroit and you look at this as a design city, it's one of the only UNESCO cities of design in the country. We have amazing architectures, all these things. We have a automotive DNA in heritage here, which turns out some amazing designers. So when you look at the competitive advantage that we have here, what are some of the things that you look at?
I mean, I think Detroit has a certain level of grit that has always been there. When I talked about my mom being a teacher, I didn't actually go to Detroit public schools, and I was always intimidated by the art students there because they had a lot of talent. So I think our talent is deep. I think because we're rooted in automotive, just that alone, that breadth that expands into so many avenues, which includes design. I just think that it's a creative hub for a lot of talent that can then branch off from automotive design into apparel to footwear. I mean, those foundational skills are there.
Agree.
I'd say with the historical diversity, the fact that Detroit is a hard-working city, so we tell our students, be good to work with and don't be outworked. And I think that speaks for Detroit. We're not outworked. And I think that goes along with the historical creativity of Detroit and all the designers that have stayed here and who come here. And that's pretty exciting. We have faculty from around the world that love being in Detroit because of our history and being a UNESCO City of Design. Yep. So I think it's all the above in that grit part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's very few cities in America that has a foundation of creativity bigger than, actually probably none bigger than Detroit. And so to Crystal's point, I mean, these kids are, you know, when you're born, when you have artistic talents, there's a big chunk of it you're born with. Mm-hmm. And that is inherited, like you get it from someone in the lineage, right? And it's clear that it's strong here. It's strong. It is strong here. Yeah.
And I think there's a strong artist community as well. You know, I think, you know, art and design very much live side by side, not only at, you know, CCS, but Cranbrook. You know, the work that Eames and Saarinen and others did here, they literally birthed the modern design movement here. And you look at companies like Carhartt, like Workwear was literally founded here. Mm-hmm. So I think, let's take inventory of our global influence that we've had, and then that totally inspires, because you need to know where you've been to know where you're going, right? And I think there's more creativity here than any other place in the world. And then, I mean, not to get into because I know this is like creative design panel, but into data and nerding out on that, but cost of living, way better here. Just the comfort that you can have in your lifestyle, like living and working in Brooklyn for the 6 months that I did it. And I know there's some people in the audience, you guys are laughing for good reason, right? Like going 3 miles in Brooklyn in an hour and 20 minutes and 2 trains before I even get to work. It's not necessarily the most inspiring way to wake up. I love my 8-minute commute down Woodward, looking at that beautiful skyline every morning. And so I think just the style of living here, the comfort that can come with that, so that it gives you the breathing room to create. Yeah. It gives you the headspace for that. And then that work ethic that Don was talking about, it's, I don't know, you can't really find it anywhere else. And so when I think you put all that together, it's the perfect place to do it.
Yeah. I think that Detroit does a really bad job of telling this story. Like we do a really bad job of raising our hand when it's time to pat ourselves on our back. I think we've kind of been locked into this position where we've seen ourselves as the underdog, and we've been happy to be in that position, But we don't brag on our talents. We don't tell the story of our design legacy. We don't tell about that heritage. We don't talk about all the things that has actually been birthed in Detroit. You go overseas, and Detroit is beloved. Right? You go into Germany, you go into Berlin, I mean, they love Detroit. It's places named Detroit because Detroit has that just type of legacy. As far as techno is concerned, we get over 500,000 people coming to the Techno Fest every year because they know that this is where it was born. But we do a very bad job of telling the story. So how do we turn that around? How do we change that narrative and really start getting the word out that Detroit is a design city? Detroit is the design city.
I'll take a stab first. I think.
I mean, I'm not from here, so I'm a guest, but I'm gonna do my
You-
part though.
You've been observing for the
part.
last
Do
year,
my
though,
part.
on probably some best practices. I think first we have a metropolitan area of about almost 5 million people. So to your point, there's no way that we should be more well known in Europe for certain things than we are 45 minutes from here.
That's right.
It makes no sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of flipping that to where I think we just need to be more well known locally. And then I think retaining talent,
It's the retaining. Yeah.
when I met Dee and then I thought I was going to be a footwear designer, it was like, okay, I'm either going to live in Portland when I grow up or New York.
Right.
Or I'm going to go work in Germany, but I didn't want to do that either. So I think we need more opportunities here, but then broadcasting those opportunities, I think, as well. Like that, GM has a lot more than just car design, right? And what the future of a car looks like. There's interior design and there's all of those things. And so I think just retaining the talent, I think multiple panels have touched on it over the last day or two, that we can't export our most precious resource. Yeah. And I think that if we can get the region on board with actually knowing what's going on in this city, that's amazing. Like the rest of the world is taking note of, and then retaining the talent, I think those two things would be huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, I was born and raised in Detroit, and when I learned about CCS in high school, I had never heard of CCS. So you're right, getting the word out is one aspect, and doing it early. We got to get busy. So these programs that we have and the partnerships that we have are amazing, right? So knowing that, really proud to be with GM, with the partnerships that we have. We have the You Make a Difference program, and it's designed to introduce middle school and high school students to transportation design and sculpting. And that program is a wonderful pipeline to get them ready for colleges and experiences like, with CCS and Pencil. We talk about art programs being cut, from schools, and making sure that we have another avenue for students. The Boys and Girls Club is one of those avenues where GM, we provided some funding there, and with partnership with Pencil, we hosted a master class with colors, materials, and finishes with an automotive spin to it. But, if it's not at school, what other programs, what other avenues? So just getting busy, as you said, Alan, just making sure that here at home, we know the resources that we have, we know the opportunities that we have, and then just keep making those natural connections. Over the last year, me being able to meet Dwayne and others, and any way we can connect each other to someone else, and kind of being a broker, just to get the word out. I think that helps.
So in addition to that, there's a little nonprofit that Dwayne and I actually are on the board, Design Connect, and their mission is to create more design curriculum for Detroit schools, and so that's an example of that. And Michigan Design Connect, which sponsors design competitions throughout the state. In terms of having more people know, we suffer still CCS, even to your point, around here, some people will know what CCS means. Some people, I didn't know College for Creative Studies and CCS was the same thing. One of the things that we're saying is that being the best kept secret in anything is not a marketing plan. Right. And so that is not something to be proud of, to be a best kept secret. So I think what helps us, at least at CCS, and I think for Detroit too, is that, students and young people in social media, if you do a good job and students have good experience, whether it's K through 12 or all the great colleges in and around Detroit, students put that on social media. And they also put it on there when you don't do a good job. And so, one of the things that we're looking at is really making sure that we have great wraparound support for students and expand how we teach and learn art and design. And students will help that in terms of putting it out on some good social media.
Yeah. I would just add, bring industries here, and then bring people here so they can see it for themselves. And if they get here, they'll see it, they'll feel it, and then they'll go back to their respective places, bragging and talking about the city, and that's our plan. we have a bullhorn, you know that. So we're going to share it.
That's great. All right, so let's open it up to the audience for a couple questions. I know we got a couple minutes left. So if anybody has a question. We got one down front.
You're right.
Hi, this is a question for Crystal. Thank you. So I saw talking to your colleagues yesterday, Tammy and Nicole Simons, and one of the questions I asked them, I said, does General Motors or the car companies still do clay modeling or prototypes? Okay. And given all the new digital design, et cetera, CAD and 3D printing and everything else, is that still done, and how has digital impacted the making of essentially, clay prototypes?
Great question. So hands-on clay versus the digital, right? You need both. Mm-hmm. I would say we can't substitute that hands-on just yet. I mean, it's just something about that natural hand-to-clay craft that you still need in the process. But because we can take that, we can scan it and send it digitally and work out some criteria with engineering and kind of move the process along, right now there's value in both. When I look at some of the talent coming in, some take to the hands-on more than the digital side. And there's a creative aspect to both. I'm glad we still utilize all of it. There are tools, depending on the process, of where you lean into hands-on versus the digital. So right now, I would say for GM, we value both. I don't have a crystal ball to say that, but I'm kind of old school because I like just, pen and paper, sketching out your design. So I love that aspect of hands-on. But what I can tell you, as we're nurturing the talent, like even within the building, we still have classes just getting back to that craft of the hands-on with clay.
We teach both still.
Yeah.
Of course, the digital and the clay.
Yeah.
We're going to stay on Crystal. Crystal, hi. You're very inspiring. Thank you so much. Did you ever feel held back as a woman leader, or was it a secret advantage? And then a bonus question for Dwayne. We want to hear about the shoes.
So did I ever feel held back? Let me go back to representation, because I didn't mention this. It's very important. When I was at CCS, I had two uncles that were working at General Motors, and they got busy researching, trying to find someone that looked exactly like me in the role. And her name was Marietta Ellis. She was the first female designer in General Motors history. I got connected with her. I still call her to this day. And because she was doing it, because I could see her, during my internship and early in my career, because I could see her doing the job, I knew I could do it. So that representation was really important. Any challenges that came my way, I just focused in on my talent. It's something about staying focused on what you're there to do. That's the best thing that you can do for yourself, do for whoever you're working with, the people around you, and really staying focused on that.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
She want to hear about your shoes.
Oh, no. I can't tell you that. Then you're going to want to get them, and then I got to get rid of them. I can't share what I do with it. Yeah, that's against the rules.
Quick question. Quick question for the whole panel. It's really exciting that the auto show is focused on the electrification, and it's about sustainability of our transportation system. I was wondering if you've thought about material reuse, because now we're trying to go into a zero waste And I know that comes up from the very design aspect of products up front, because GM has been a leader in a lot of material reuse. And I just wanted to understand if that's part of the curriculum for young students these days to design so that we don't have waste.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Yeah, with that, and again, students are helping to drive that.
Yeah.
If you're not moving towards greener and greener educational practices, and we, like a lot of higher ed, we have some work to do to do that. So we have a graduate dean, Ian Lambert, that's really driving that and chair of the committee to really figure out, not just in the classroom, but across the institution, where you can be more green as a college. And in fact, that notion of being green also is impacting the transportation world, because Gen Z students actually are more interested in having transportation, but not necessarily owning a car, because they want to have a smaller carbon footprint. So that's changing how cars are being designed and transportation is being designed. And so the Gen Zs, and we do a lot of research on, of course, our current demographics of the traditional age college student, and they're really driving a lot of the changes that we're discussing at CCS, from green roofs to solar panels to no grass to making sure that our cafeteria is more green. So in addition to what we do in the curriculum through not just our design classes, but our liberal arts as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
and it's showing up for us on the corporate sponsor side. They're coming to us specifically looking for design programming around sustainability, and these are Logitech, footwear companies, apparel companies, like it's multiple sectors, because they're seeing that their side of the business is so disposable that they're contributing to the problem, and they want to be able to train the next generation of kids to design their future literally, so it doesn't become this direction it's headed right now with fast fashion.
And
Okay,
just
we
to
got one
add-
last question here from Paris.
Hey, this question is for the whole panel. So I have a real estate company, a real estate technology company, and we've sold about $100 million of very ugly real estate. So I'm wondering if you guys have any plans to incorporate architecture, because Albert Kahn did a lot of work in architecture here. So how do we plan, or how do you plan to revive Detroit's architecture?
That's for you.
It's very, very kind of flat. And I used to work at Cadillac, so we got a lot of work to do.
So I will say that recently in the industrial design space, we look at different environments to refresh, and we hired our first architect just recently. So just looking at diverse talent, they have been an excellent add to the team. So absolutely, there's room.
And I think on the tech side as well, as vehicles become more shared experiences and things, we've had some folks approach us about connecting the buildings to the car, and now that becomes a 360 environment. So now, architects are going to have to think of that, and car designers and vice versa. So I think it's becoming a whole urban ecosystem and designing that rather than the individual.
And we have students from all different majors actually going into transportation design, because everything's changing. So interior design students are going into car design, because the interiors are becoming so much more important because of autonomous vehicles coming.
All right, guys. This is great. Dwayne, Crystal, Don, Alan, thank you so much. Thanks, guys.